All right, what's going on, guys? This is the first episode of our DoubleDouble podcast. My name's Husani. Got Marcos in the building here,
What up, though?
and yeah, we talking some NBA news. Specifically free agency. We're gonna go over our top 5 teams based on moves that we felt were good for that team in that situation, and we're also gonna throw in one extra for you guys. Honorable mention. Because, it's hard to narrow it down sometimes.
Preach.
So, all right, so I guess we'll start it up.
All right, honorable mention. I'm going
for
to give
me-
my honorable mention right here, man. I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to give
go
my
ahead.
honorable mention, Toronto Raptors. Listen, man,
Okay.
we know what the outcome's going to be, right? They're going to end up losing in the second round or maybe even the first round with somebody. But they did what they had to do, right? Like, you signed back like Ibaka and Kyle Lowry, and you run it back with those guys. Like, what else? How else could they have gotten better outside of just maybe having some more cap space to do nothing with it right now and praying maybe in the future somebody actually comes to Toronto? I think you rolled the dice with that crew, and now I think Kyrie ends up staying there. But if Kyrie does leave, and maybe it opens up the East, that looks a little bit smart of a move.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I can't really argue with that.
That's why they my
I mean,
honorable
they didn't-
mention, though. They ain't getting that top 5, though.
yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that's good for that spot. I didn't really have them in there, but you know what? I never looked at it like that. They really couldn't have done too much in that situation. But yeah. All right. So for me, I got the man. It's my surprising people. I got the Kings, man. And I like what they did a lot. They if we had done this podcast like 3 days ago, this would look even better.
It looks so much better, man.
But yeah, they got the homie Zach Randolph. He's gonna do some things. But
He's gonna
still,
do some
regardless,
things.
regardless of what happened, yesterday or whatever day that was, it's still a good pickup for them. They got Vince Carter, George Hill, Bogdanovich. Those are good, solid veterans. They need with that young team. And then in the draft, they cleaned up in the draft, man. Like, obviously they got Fox, they got Justin Jackson and Giles, who I think that we don't know what he is. He could be amazing, or he could just be, injured forever. So, but still, I think at the spot they took him, I think it's a good rest.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, I like the Kings. I like what they did.
I'm in complete agreement with that. And my number 5 team is the Sacramento Kings. So, way to read my mind over there. Yeah, man. I mean, bringing in those veterans with that mix of veterans with youth guys, the coach, not Fizdale, man. Who the hell is their coach? The guy who left Memphis, man. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. He basically brought in some of that old Memphis crew over there. Vince Carter, Zebo. He knows what they're about. They're going to be able to mix them in with those young kids. You get a guy like De'Aaron Fox learning from George Hill. And they were all on, like, short deals, too. So, those are guys that are in there, provide some veteran leadership. If it works out, cool. If it doesn't work out, deuces. And I think that's the best way you can handle that. And it brought some stability to a franchise that, man, I don't know, hasn't had it in a really, really, really long time. And Dave Yeager's the coach name over there, man. I forgot about him. So I really like that team, man. That's definitely my 5th team over there on the list.
Okay. For me, 5th, I got Philadelphia, man. Philadelphia. They didn't add like a ton of free agents. Obviously, they're getting their number 1 picks back from injury, or the number 1 pick, Ben Simmons, back. So that's not really an addition. But they added number 1, Markelle Fultz, and got J.J. Redick in free agency, which I think is great for them, on that deal, 1-year deal. So I think that helps that team stay. I don't know. I don't know where exactly I slot them. I think I see them around 35, 38 wins next year. Maybe like just at the they're going to be in the hunt for the playoff race. I don't think they make it. That's a different story.
I think if healthy, man, I think if healthy, that 8 seed is definitely something that could happen, and honestly should happen.
Yeah, it could.
But
it could happen.
But I'm not
Yeah, it's healthy.
I'm not really sure about that health situation. I haven't
yeah,
seen certain people
right
play basketball on like a basketball court, so that's a problem for me.
I mean, I think they're obviously an entertaining team to watch. And they also got Amir Johnson free agency. Who
I was waiting for that. That's the key, right? That was the major key.
Yeah, he'll give them a good 10 minutes a game. Doing something, doing what he does, being a defense and yes, what he does pretty much.
Yeah,
decent rebounder.
I agree with you. I like Fultz from the little bit I've seen. I have to really see him play in the NBA to even have like a full opinion on the guy. But, man, you couldn't have taken Tatum or Josh Jackson at 3 and kept that Lakers pick, though? Like, you don't think that would be a pretty good move? I guess they really just saw in Fultz something special, which if he is great. But I think the safer move would have been just taking whoever you wanted to take at 3, since this draft was loaded anyway. And then you go and have that Lakers pick on your pocket to make a trade or to make a move or to just take that pick.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I also got a decision. They needed a point guard. That was the position they needed the most. So
Ben Simmons.
Yeah. There's that.
Jared Bayless.
The ball the whole time, though. I don't know.
T.J. McConnell. They got 3 point guards on that lineup right there.
I mean,
T.J. McConnell was winning NBA basketball games last year, man.
I mean, how many games did they win total last year?
Hey man, circa January 10, he had 2 good buzzer beaters.
No, I think he's
fine as a backup.
Yeah, agreed. I think he's great on the bench, off the bench.
76ers, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right,
so
number
got
14. Number 14 right here, man. The Wolves, yo. I like everything that the Wolves did, man. Obviously Jimmy Butler, that's a major key. Not only getting Jimmy Butler, but getting him for what they got him for. Like Chris Dunn, and not only that, but man, they flipped picks with the Bulls. It's not only that they gave him the pick, like they flipped picks, so they still drafted somebody afterwards. Like I still don't understand how that trade actually happened. So you get Jimmy Butler, you reunite him with Thibs, where he had his best years, whatever, and then they signed Teague, they signed Gibson, they signed some veterans over there around them, and all of a sudden, that's a powerhouse there. Like that team. Let me hold back on powerhouse. We got to see how that goes. I think they'll still be on the bottom tier of playoff teams in the West. But that's a very big improvement in a Western Conference that's pretty difficult to compete in. And it's a big step forward, especially for a team like Minnesota, that they normally don't get these kind of breaks. This isn't exactly how things work over there. And it gets them to the point where they're involved in like a Kyrie Irving sweepstakes. When Kyrie Irving now names 4 teams he wants to go to, which is a little bit ridiculous, but whatever. For argument's sake here, he names 4 teams he wants to go to. The Timberwolves are on that list. That's big time right there, man. It's big time to get him to number 4, but it's big time.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I had the Wolves at 4 as well.
Oh, this was not rehearsed, by the way. This was not practice. Hey, we actually made a point to not speak about this beforehand.
Yeah. We made sure, hey, don't talk about it at all. It's kind of hard because you want to talk about that stuff, but. Anyway, for all of the reasons you mentioned, plus getting Jeff Teague as well. I think that provides more spacing than Rubio did. And you got guys who all can get their own shot. So you don't really need facilitator first point guard on that roster.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what they did,
Yeah, and Jamal Crawford, too. I forgot to throw Jamal Crawford in there. Who, I think is maybe a little bit overrated at this point, but still, nonetheless, a guy you could bring off your bench, get you buckets. And veterans, man. I thought that was important, man, because I think it's fine to have, a lot of young players on your team like the NBA. I think that's great. I understand, Philadelphia doing with rebuilding and trying to get stars, all that jazz. That all works. But at some point, these kids have to learn how to actually win. And I don't think you really learn how to win if you don't have veterans on your team that have won before. And I think that's very important to the development of a guy like Andrew Wiggins or a guy like Karl Anthony Towns to have a Jimmy Butler in there, to have a Jeff Teague, guys that have actually won and done some before. They haven't gone all the way, but they've been in a conference championship game or conference finals. They've been in the playoffs. They could tell these guys, here's what we got to do. I think that the off-the-court stuff over there helps just as much as the on-the-court stuff, because the on-the-court stuff, honestly, is a little bit of a problem as to how you – like, there's a lot of guys that want to take a lot of shots. I don't know how you really manage the ball between Wiggins and Butler and Towns. I don't know, for example, who the best player is out of all three of those. I want to say it's Karl Anthony Towns, but it's probably Jimmy Butler.
Well, obviously Towns has the highest ceiling. Right now, it is
high
probably
ceiling
Butler.
is Towns.
Yeah.
Right now, it's Butler. And Butler isn't necessarily what we saw in Chicago. He's not really the best. I don't know. I don't want to fully judge him because that Chicago thing was a whole mess. But maybe he's not the best leader. I don't know how much of a facilitator he's interested in being. It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of stuff meshes.
Agreed. Which is why, like, everyone's saying, oh, yeah, they're going to be, like, the number 2 seed in the West. And all this, it's like pumping brakes on that. We got to see how it fits.
If they get 6th seed, I think that's a big, like, accomplishment.
I agree. And I think I don't know. It's really hard to predict the West, but they definitely look like they're going to make the playoffs for the first time since, I guess, KG left.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it has to be since then.
The thing about the West, though, man, is once you, like, leave those top, like, 3 or 4 teams, I think this year it's a lot more open, partially because that kind of group from maybe even 4 on down, I think is a lot closer than it's been in the past couple years. Maybe like 3. So, the top we could kind of all agree, Warriors, Rockets, Spurs, and Thunder. Well, let's leave it at those 3. And after that, I think is when you could start opening debates. I'd throw the Thunder in there. And I don't know after that. After that, it's a bunch of question marks, right? Like, to me, like the Clippers, I don't know what they're going to be. I don't even know if Blake Griffin's going to be ready when the season starts. So I really don't know what they're going to be. The Thunder kind of have to get, figure out how that whole thing is going to work over there. The Wolves, we don't really know what they're going to look like. The Nuggets, they should be improved. Maybe, maybe not. The Blazers, they always seem to make it. They haven't really made too many moves this offseason aside from dumping Allen Crabbe.
But
so that's why I see like a team like the Wolves can make it in there.
Nurkic, though.
That's true, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 100%. So I'm saying that bottom tier of the Western Conference is open for a team like the Timberwolves to get in there and get that experience.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, number 3. What do you got for number 3?
Number 3. So we're switching up. I'm doing it first.
Yeah,
3?
Go ahead, man.
All right, I got your Rockets. Yeah, I got your Rockets at 3. Gosh. Now I know you're not in love with CP3. Well-known Chris Paul hater. For all you guys listening.
Chris Paul realist. I like to say I'm a proud member of the Chris Paul Realist Club.
But that's big. That's big. No one can, despite your feelings on him. And everybody has something to say about Chris Paul. The main knock on him is like, he can't win. He's never made it to the conference finals. Listen, man, I've seen him play in the playoffs, and he's played great. I've never seen him play like complete trash and just like cost his team a series. That's never been my opinion. Even in New Orleans.
No, I think in New Orleans was the best version of Chris Paul. Honestly, I think pre-injury was like the best version of Chris Paul. Here's the thing with him. Sometimes you don't see him messing up for his team because he's injured. He's not on the court to mess up the thing in the playoffs. So that's problem number 1. And yeah, I have seen him in some late game situations kind of dribble the ball randomly off his feet, and you're like, what's going on over there? It's interesting to me because the same things you could kind of say with James Harden. I think Chris Paul maybe hides it a little bit better and has come up clutcher in bigger situations than James Harden, but it's kind of the same knock on Harden where, that last game 6, he was nowhere to be found.
That was a terrible game. Man.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So
that's what I'm saying, but I've never seen that type of game.
Definitely not to that level, but he's had his hiccups as well. But I think it is a little bit blown out of proportion as to, like, the Clippers didn't really lose because of Chris Paul. I don't think that was ever the issue there.
And that's my point. Plus, which one of those when were they favored to make a conference finals? They were favored to win series. They didn't win. Don't get me wrong on that. That's definitely happened. But when were they actually favored to make it to the finals or conference finals? Like, never.
I think their big year was that when the Warriors won the title for the first time. But I think that's the year that they lost to the Spurs in the semifinals.
Which is that a big surprise to anyone?
I take that. I'm not sure. Well, no, it's not. I take that. I'm not 100% sure I'm getting that right. But that year that the Warriors won, that was kind of the peak of Lob City and everything. And it just didn't work out. They kind of just ran out of gas, and they didn't have enough shooters. There was a lot of weaknesses to that team, and I'm not sure.
Did anyone get injured that year? Like I feel like
Probably.
Blake and Chris alternate years getting injured.
It's kind of how they roll.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, and it always seems like, and Blake's the same way. Blake's injured, hurt around playoff time often. So I don't know. I have a hard time judging somebody because they're injured or hurt. I think that's ridiculous. Like you want to say that a player didn't perform well when they're healthy, and you want to make arguments for that, fine. But just because they're hurt, I mean, yes, you have to get on the floor to play, but how do you prevent an injury? Unless you're doing something like Blake Griffin punching somebody in the face, you can't blame them for that.
You can't prevent an injury, but you could say that somebody's more prone to injury if you see a repeated pattern of injuries happening.
Yeah, but there's a difference between, but that's still not their fault. Like, I don't think you can put that as a knock on a guy. You could put it as a knock as a guy, or you could put that as a knock on a guy.
I disagree.
In terms of,
I'd put it as a knock. Like, for example, Blake Griffin, I wouldn't sign him to that contract that the Clippers signed him. Now, they did it because they kind of, I guess, had to, as in they couldn't lose two faces of the franchise in one summer. But I'm not paying that guy that amount of money over those years and conditioning myself to just being stuck with him when he just has random injury.
I think you misunderstand me.
Definitely
I don't mean you pay a guy the same amount who's injured versus he had the same production versus a healthy guy. I don't mean that. What I'm saying in terms of legacy, like I hear people say, oh well, Chris Paul can't win because he's never healthy to play in the playoffs. Like that type of argument, I think it's ridiculous. That's more what I was getting to. Like if you want to make a judgment on somebody's legacy because they didn't get somewhere and that they didn't get to that place because they were injured, to me that doesn't make sense.
So
that's out of his control.
We can't have any knocks in on Tracy McGrady for not making it to like the second round until he's on the Spurs on the bench then.
I'm not saying that because he was healthy some of those years.
Some of those, but a lot of those he wasn't.
Yeah. And the years that he wasn't, no, I don't think you knock him for that because he couldn't play.
All right. I agree with you can't knock him, but I mainly just don't want him on my team, though, because those are years that we're wasting then.
Agreed. I'm not saying
I've seen too many Chris Pauls have, like, messed up thumbs and bad hamstrings, like, going into the first round of the playoffs. Like, I've seen that already.
That's true. It's happened. But
anyway, though,
I'm saying is,
go to your positives about this.
Yeah, we kind of went on a tangent there. But yeah, look. So you got a guy, and it's funny. It's so funny how perception changes. The beginning of this time last year, when it was being known that James Harden was going to play the point guard position, everybody's like, oh, he can't play point guard. That's stupid. Yeah. He can't facilitate. He doesn't know how to, like he's going to get so many turnovers, which he got a lot of turnovers.
That is true.
But he's going to be terrible. Blah, blah, blah. He can't play defense, which he still can't play defense. But it's but overall, pretty, it was successful. And now people are like, oh, CPD, bring in CP3. But James is the point guard. How is that going to work when they both need the ball all the time? Like, if this move would have happened last year, everybody like, oh, that's awesome. Play James off the ball and blah, blah, blah. I don't think the fit's going to be – I think people are making way too big of a deal of the fit. I think out of all the major free agency signings, maybe with the exception of Gordon Hayward, I think that this wasn't a free agency sign. This was a trade. But for all the major moves, with the exception of Hayward, I think this in terms of basketball-wise, will fit easier than all the others. I think this fits easier than Jimmy Butler and the Wolves. I think it fits easier than Paul George on the Thunder. And what's the other big move? Is there another one?
Kevin Durant to the Warriors. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, no, that's I understand. Then I thought it was ignorant last year when people said that Harden couldn't play with the ball because he was their point guard. Although he started at shooting guard, like he was their point guard already. Like there really wasn't much of a change here. Mike D'Antoni just named him the point guard and gave him the ball even more than he already had it. I think Harden could play off the ball perfectly fine. He hasn't done it in a while, so I think definitely the beginning, and it's just gonna be a feeling out process, natural, like happens with any team, like it happened with the Heat when like Wade and LeBron and Bosh were there. Like it takes time for those people to get used to. Same thing with the Warriors this year. Same thing with Chris Paul. But they're both guys that kind of work better with the ball in their hand. At least they have in the past couple years. I think it depends. I hope it doesn't turn into a my turn, your turn thing where, like, Chris Paul brings up the rock this time and next time Harden does and it becomes predictable. That's kind of what, like, Wade and LeBron were, like, the first year there in Miami with those different positions. I hope it becomes something a little more natural. I hope, for example, they stagger the minutes so that Chris Paul's out there with the second unit sometimes, and maybe Harden could switch with him sometimes. I think it could be something very special, and I think they'll play well off of each other. They like each other. They're smart. I'm not too worried about the fit. And I really am very curious to see what Chris Paul looks like without the ball in his hand. I think he could be very good. Like, that guy's a really good shooter. I would love to see, like, Harden opening up, dribbling down. Like, Harden pick and roll with, like, Capella that frees up Paul on, like the weak side or something. That's dope. I hope it gets to that point. I'm not 100% sure it will, but I hope it gets to that point.
Yeah. I agree on that. So who you got at 3?
That's it. That's all we got. Yeah, because that's the only move the Rockets made, aside from like all those other random like contracts they signed just to get rid of people and stuff like that. Listen,
that's the most significant move. I mean, they got a lot of.
They got PJ Tucker.
Yeah, they got PJ Tucker, and they added some other bench players. But yeah, that's the big move. But that is a big move, you know.
But what about giving up Patrick Beverley and Montrezl Harrell and Sam Dekker for him, though?
Well, Dekker, how often did he play last year?
Oh, he played a good amount. He was hurt at the end, but the beginning of the season he actually played a little bit. I'll tell you, Dekker has to be good because Mike D'Antoni never plays his rookies, and he actually played Dekker. I think Dekker was in his second year officially, but he didn't really play much the first year.
No, he had that back surgery or something.
I like Dekker, and I like Montrez too, but they're backups. The Beverly one's interesting. Yeah. Beverly was gone, but Beverly's contract was so good. I get it. And at the worst, it's a 1-year deal with Chris Paul, right? Except for the fact that, like, next year you might have to pay this guy all that money.
Well, but for this year, we're talking about this year.
This year,
and they basically kept their starting lineup, you know, with the exception of Beverly, you know, and you got CP3 instead. So you keep Ryan Anderson, you keep Ariza, you keep Gordon.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they kept the whole crew.
So,
but you know, there's no chance that Gordon and Ryan Anderson stay healthy 2 years in a row, though.
Yeah.
Like, there's a 0% chance that happens.
See, everyone talks about injuries with the Sixers. This team is a huge injury risk as well because you got, you know, Chris Paul. We've already had a long discussion about that. And as you mentioned, Anderson and Eric Gordon, who I cannot believe.
Capella's gotten hurt, too, for periods of time. He's young. I'm not going to label him injury prone yet. But if he misses, like, another 2 months this year, I'm going to be like, I don't know about this.
And you got Nene.
And Nene, who's just old.
Yeah.
That's his injury.
But, hey, man, if they were all healthy by the end of the year.
They were.
That's a dangerous team. That's a really dangerous team.
They definitely are. Number 3, though. This is a dangerous team, too, right here. Future Eastern Conference. I won't say champion, but we'll see how that Kyrie thing works out. I had the Boston Celtics, man. I really like their offseason. I like everything about their offseason, man. I like how they didn't fall for the Paul George, Jimmy Butler heist that maybe they were trying to, those teams were trying to pull off on them. Having said that, though, if they could have gotten, well, we could talk about maybe some other day, but I don't know why in the end they ended up pulling the trigger on that deal 100%. But, you know, I assume that Boston was able to offer them something better, and I assume they were able to offer them something better that maybe both teams could have agreed on, but I get you don't want to keep Paul George in the same conference. But having said that, I felt like the Celtics holding on and being patient and signing Gordon Hayward was the right move. I think Gordon Hayward is just an amazing fit for that team. I don't think people recognize how good Gordon Hayward actually is. People don't really watch Utah basketball. I don't blame them. It's definitely not the most entertaining thing, but I really like the Utah team. I liked everything they did under Quinn Snyder. Brad Stevens known Gordon Hayward since like high school. Like I think he I don't know if he coached him or he like recruited him, or he was like the one guy to recruit him, the Butler. This goes way back, that connection, man. And you had a guy who could score. That guy could score like 25 points if he really wants to. He's going to pass. He's going to get you boards. It adds a tremendous versatility to your team, man. This is what we talked a little bit about yesterday, prepping for the show. Like, that Celtics team now, like, you could play anybody 1 through 5 almost and match up with any team that you want at any size or any kind of length in the perimeter or in the backcourt, front court. And Gordon Hayward, to me, is kind of that piece that could bring it all together. And then you get Jason Tatum to boot. Like, you just get the third guy in the draft who may be the best guy in the draft too when it's all said and done. And that's an immediate offense off the bench. And I won't be shocked if Tatum's starting by the end of the year at the 4 spot. You heard it here first, maybe, unless somebody else said it. The only knock is that you lose Avery Bradley, which really sucks because he was the longest tenured Celtics there. So if anything, he was a veteran leader in that locker room, and B, he was really good. But he was injury prone in his own way. So I think the Celtics played this offseason the best way they could have given the hand that they were dealt. And they still have cards in the pocket, which may turn out to be nothing or they may turn out to be something. Next offseason, though, is going to be very telling with Isaiah Thomas up and what happens there. But for this year.
Agreed.
Yeah, for this year, A+ to me on the Boston Celtics and what they did. And I think this team, as constituted right now, will give the Cavs a run for their money in the Eastern Conference. Like, they will push them to 7 games if it comes to that, as both teams are constituted now. If Kyrie leaves, then it's really wide open. But I think as it is now, with the healthy Isaiah Thomas, which is a catch, he's not going to have hip surgery, I think is what they ended up concluding. We don't really know how bad that hip was, they've kind of been coy about that. It's been quiet. I hope it's all right. But adding Hayward and adding that kind of versatility and just giving Brad Stevens we saw what Brad Stevens could do with, like, crappy players. Now I want to see what he does with, like, real talent on his team.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I actually, we haven't got the 2s, but Boston was my second team right there. So,
all right, so you can roll right in there.
Yeah, and nobody here knows yet, but Boston's my favorite team, so I follow them, very well. And, yeah, I agree with what you said. I think it's funny because, they got a lot of flack for, getting too many assets or not using them or whatever. But like you said, I think they did the best given the situation, without overpaying. If you see so many times teams, like, give up, 3 first-round picks for this, borderline all-star guy who can score 20 points a game but doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
I think I'm actually glad everything worked out exactly the way it did. I think, just like you said, this team pushes Cleveland. This team makes it so that, as presently constructed, this team makes it so that Cleveland can't mess around. Like, they have to really, make sure they're on their A game, because if they come into that series, thinking like, we're just gonna sweep these guys, or just, they're not focused, then they can mess around and lose that series if they're not careful.
100%.
So, and that's even with Kyrie. Without Kyrie, like you said, I'm not saying that's a loss, but that's definitely that puts that much more pressure on LeBron to pull out, some ridiculous games to close that series out. So,
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I agree with you. I like, Gordon Hayward. I think he's very underrated, and I think he's an underrated defender too.
Yeah.
He's not Kawhi, but he's solid. He's good on that end. He's a good defensive player. And
I like the idea of having Jalen, Gordon, and like a Jay Crowder as like your wings. Like, that's like a solid like defensive lineup right there that can score too, with the exception of Jay.
Yeah. Well, Jay's decent.
Yeah, he does what he can.
He do a little something.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I like to see him, man. And along with Tatum, I think what most of the public doesn't know. We got Shemi Ojale with our next pick, which
Right.
we got him at 37, and he was projected to go in the first round.
Right.
Like at the end of the first round, but he was projected to go in the first round. And if he turns out like that could be a big steal for us. I'm excited. I'm low-key excited for him to give a couple minutes off the bench every now and then. And yeah, man, I just like the direction the team's going in. I think I think they played it perfectly. Bravo to Ainge for that one.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens this year.
100%.
Who you got at 2?
Number 2, yo. And these guys aren't number 1 just because number one wasn't really a debate, and I don't even know how you could have a different number 1. But the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yo, the Oklahoma City Thunder at number 2, man. Like, their offseason, I'll sign off on that offseason every offseason, man. You unload Victor Oladipo, who, listen, man, think what you want about the kid. I like him personally. I like his game, but he doesn't have much game yet, and I don't know if he ever will. And they paid him way too much money to, like, be sitting there, and clearly it didn't work with Russell Westbrook. That was not going to be a thing. And they unloaded that contract, and Sabonis, who I like, but, he's young, for Paul George. And all of a sudden, you got yourself a nice dynamic duo there, and that's a risk that I'll take any day of the week. Now, Paul George, he's rumored to go to L.A., all that jazz. He might only be there for a year. And if your worst-case scenario, though, is you have Paul George for a year, they're going to be in the playoffs. I mean, barring injuries, they're going to be in the playoffs, and they're going to be a very tough out, I think, in the playoffs. And then Paul George walks. Okay, but then you have all that cap room where you could go and do whatever you want with it, which is great, which I'd rather have than Victor Oladipo. So their worst-case scenario is that they have cap room next year and they have a really good year this year. And their best-case scenario is that they go deep in the playoffs with Paul George, and he says, yeah, man, I like it here. Like, I'm going to re-sign here. Me, Wes, we're going to do this. Maybe we can take a little bit less money, which I kind of doubt. I think Paul George is taking as much cash as he can, and rightfully so. And we're going to do this up, and we're going to run this back over here. And then they added Patrick Patterson just to, like, add some. Now, I think he had surgery or something recently or something like that. But either way, he'll hopefully be fine. And that just gives you kind of a stretch 4 over there. And they still have moves in them if they really want to. Like, I think you could trade a guy like Enes Kanter and get some more pieces down the road if it really comes to that. So I thoroughly impressed by Sam Presti, who did it on the low. Like, nobody knew this was happening. And then it just happened, and I was like, okay, like that's the kind of move I could get down with. Yeah. You tell me you lose Kevin Durant last year and you bring in Paul George this year? That's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it's a good move for them. And in retrospect, I probably should have had them in the top 5 instead of Philly. But yeah, that's good, very good points right there. I think.
You think this Paul George Westbrook thing gonna work out?
It's so interesting, man. It's really hard. A lot of it depends on Westbrook and how he's gonna take it. Like we know he was happy. He wanted, at least from what we've seen, from social media or whatever. He's cool with Paul George. Paul George coming, but Russ and KD didn't work out.
Yeah.
How's Russ and Paul George going to work out? Will they mesh better? Maybe. I mean, if Russ has to play different.
Yeah.
If it's just going to be him, if you just want to replace Paul George or Oladipo with Paul George, and you're just going to have him spot up, that's not going to work.
Nah, not at all. You're gonna hear Paul George complaining like a week in. Like 2 weeks in, Paul George is going to be like, yeah, man, I'm not getting the ball enough.
Yeah, like he has to – I think they could do pick and rolls between the two of them and have both of them, either one of them going to the basket while the other one fades off the pick or vice versa. The roll man goes to the pick man goes to the basket and the ball handler stays around the perimeter or something, some action with both of them together. Maybe an off-ball screen for George with Westbrook on the ball, or vice versa, because obviously Westbrook's a good finisher at the rim.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever the case might be, it just can't be like one of the reasons why Oklahoma City was never seen as a serious threat to make it to the finals or even Eastern Conference Finals was because they were way too predictable in offense. We all knew Westbrook was going to get the ball, and when he got the ball, it's honestly like, yeah, he didn't shoot a good percentage. Yeah, he got a lot of turnovers, but it's incredible that he did what he did when all that offense was him standing around or everybody else standing around and him dribbling and passing the defender to get to the rim.
Yeah.
Like that's incredible. That's really impressive by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can do something different than that, then I think it will be successful.
Which we did see with Kevin Durant there. But the only advancement I saw when Kevin Durant was still there was Billy Donovan. Like, it took him mad long, but he finally realized, hey, man, I should probably have one of these guys out on the court at all times. So he staggered some minutes. And, like, he had, like, always a Kevin Durant or a Russell Westbrook on the floor. To me, there's no reason next year why either Paul George or Russell Westbrook shouldn't be on the floor. Like, there should be no points where neither of them are on the floor unless you're up by, like, 30 in the fourth quarter. Like, that's basic 101.
I agree. And I don't know why more teams,
I don't get it.
Don't do that. Like, to me, that's like, if I'm playing 2K, that's what I'm doing. If I'm controlling the substitutions, I'm keeping one of them on the floor, and especially early on, I feel like you made this point earlier with
Harden,
and
yeah.
like especially
you need,
early
Chris Paul
on,
needs to be out there to help out that second unit, man. Like,
yeah, and early on, they're used to having their own team, so they're used to like playing. As the lone superstar or lone star. So if you have it happen very often early on, and then maybe transition a little bit more to, more minutes with them on the ball or on the court together, then I think that'll work out. So I definitely agree with that.
Let's hope it happens. Let's hope Billy Donovan hears us, man. Billy, come on, man. We need you, man. Run some plays. But the other thing is, I don't know. Maybe Billy Donovan does run plays, and then Russ just does whatever he wants. To me, Russ has not been the best teammate necessary to play throughout all of this. Let's see how he does with Paul George. You hope that he's learned something, right? Like, he's already seen Kevin Durant bounce. Is he just going to do whatever he wants here with Paul George, or is he actually going to be like, all right, Paul, what do you need? What do I need? Let's figure this thing out. We'll see. I think they figure it out.
I don't. That's the thing. I hope so because I love his intensity. I love watching him play.
Yes.
But I'm not. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Like, he can't be triple-double every night Russell Westbrook this year. Like, that's not good for your team. It is to a certain extent, but it's not. Like, especially if you have Paul George there. It's cool when you got Victor Oladipo, who didn't really care. We're just happy to like kind of watch him and be like, whoa, good basketball. But with Paul George, you can't be doing that. Like, it's just not going to work.
I think it was less the triple-double effect and more just the lack of
offense. Like, everything was him, period. Like, it all started, ended with him.
Yeah, that's too much right there. Anyway, going on to what I presume both of us have is number one, the Warriors.
Oh, man, I was going to give you a drum roll. Oh, man. Number one team, the Golden State Warriors. Man, that was too easy.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously,
it's somehow got
Durant to resign for less than
less
max,
money, yo.
less than anything.
That's not fair.
Max.
He did an interview with Anthony Slater earlier in the week, man. He said, he was like, yeah, it was easy to me to take less money because, like, Steph's been underpaid his whole career, so, like, we needed to pay him. And then the other guys, like Livingston and Iggy, they've been underpaid the past couple of years, so I needed to make sure they got their money. And I was just sitting here, and I'm like, what? Like, man, like, this guy's playing a different game than everybody else. Like, Paul George, listen to this. Like, yo, my man's like, yeah, man, we got to pay those other guys over there. Yeah, man, I just got here, I got my money. I'm good. Oh, it's not fair, dude.
Yeah, that's not fair. Then they got They got Caspi. They got
Nick Young.
Nick
Yeah, Nick
Young.
Young. You think that team needs Nick Young? No. You think Nick Young's going to have like a beast year? Yes.
It's crazy because they're only, and you can't even really say it's a weakness because it's not, because their bench was still really good last year.
Yes.
But the only thing that you could maybe like if you had like Steph Curry out because either you're just in foul trouble, which didn't happen that often, or it was just like he was tired or whatever, and you have that Ian Clark who's gotten better. He keeps getting better and better. But anyway, if you have him out there, and you like you say pick your poison, you're gonna let him shoot, But now, you're gonna let Iguodala shoot because although he's gotten a lot better shooting over his career, you'd still rather have him shoot than those other guys, And you're gonna let Matt Barnes shoot, You're gonna let who else they had on that team? I don't know, but you're gonna let those guys shoot.
Yeah.
Now, you add in Nick Young and Caspi. That spacing with the bench unit is going to be just as good. Well, not just as good, but it's going to be.
No, it's going to be. It's going. It's just in that level of like Klay Thompson, Steph Curry kind of shooting, but it's still like I got to go out and respect these guys at the 3-point line kind of shooting.
You have to respect exactly. So I said just as good, but obviously they're not as good as shooters, but they're great shooters.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. That's insane.
It's wild, man.
That's insane.
And
plus you get like Jordan Bell for nothing.
Exactly. That's another one. Yeah. For cash.
And
I just bought him.
I don't know much about the kid, but from little what I've seen, like just highlights and stuff, that's a good pickup. At the very least, you didn't lose it. You didn't do it like you just paid. I don't know how much they paid the Bulls.
Yeah, I don't remember how much it was, but yeah, they paid X amount of money for a guy who, from what I've understood, he's gonna be he's already NBA defensive ready, which is great. And I'm sure the guy could play as well. I haven't really seen him too much, but I've only heard good things. And yeah, you're just paying him for cash anyway, so it's not like you're it's not fair.
That's a win-win situation there.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you cut him if he doesn't play well. But you didn't lose anything to get him.
Yeah, man. It's wild, and it's a testament to me about they did it. I don't want to say they did it the right way, but they drafted a guy like Steph Curry, they drafted a guy like Klay, they drafted a guy like Draymond. I don't think in their wildest expectations they think that either of those three would be as good as they are right now. And then you had the wherewithal to give those guys contracts. And some of it was luck too. The only reason why Steph wasn't getting paid more was because when Steph signed that contract, he had been hurt with ankle issues for years. So yeah, he wasn't going to get any more money because he wasn't worth any more money. And then he becomes a 2-time MVP, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you have the cap space to sign Kevin Durant, and then Kevin Durant wins the chip there, which is your best case scenario, and he wins it easily, and he likes playing with the guys. So he's like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah. And not only that, but he realizes how important it is for them to keep guys like Iguodala and guys like Livingston, and even have space to add in or bring back Zaza and even add in a Nick Young. He realized that, whereas in the past we don't really see that anymore. And it's different. You look at a guy like LeBron James. LeBron's only taking the max from here on out. And I respect that and I understand that. And he didn't take it while he was in Miami to allow that whole thing to happen. But now he's in Cleveland. He's like, yeah, I got to get paid all my money because I didn't get paid when I was down there. And that's fine. And that's just different points of career, whatnot. But that's, I think, what gives the Warriors an upper hand here, where they got a guy like Kevin Durant who will turn around and say, yeah, I'm good. I got my money. I was like, and he's still making a good amount. It ain't like he took a huge pay cut, but he took a substantial enough pay cut to make sure that everybody else got taken care of. And that, to me, kind of breaks the game, because that's not how your salary cap projections go. That's not how, the Players Association expected things to go. And I think it's perfectly fine. I think people kind of hate it, and, obviously they didn't really like the move. Most people didn't like the move of him coming in there last year. It was kind of cheap. I don't have any issues with it. It's freedom. I think we'd all go to a better workplace if we could, and that's just what he did. And now he re-upped with it, and he took even less money because that's how much he likes working there. And it makes, I think, for a little bit of a sadder maybe NBA product overall, because it's going to be very difficult to beat those guys. But I don't think that's impossible to beat them, and that's what other teams got to look at. And I think it led to kind of the wild free agency we had this year, where teams were trying crazy stuff.
Yeah, you'll never see what happened this year happen if the Warriors don't win.
Yeah.
Last year, or this last
Mm-hmm.
season. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you on that. They it's crazy because if you hesitated in saying they did it the right way, and I understand it's like no quote unquote right
Yeah, there's
way,
no right
but
way. Like, it
I
doesn't.
I do think the best way to get a dynasty is to do it that way.
Yeah.
You have to draft well, and then you add some pieces in free agency. Now, usually those pieces aren't MVP
Yeah,
type player,
I know.
but let's take this into perspective. Even without that, you know, people were going to slate, even if KD did not go to the Warriors, regardless of where Kevin Durant went. Well, maybe not regardless, but there are very few places he could have gone, to change the perception of the Warriors getting to the finals.
Yeah.
And even if he goes to let's say the Rockets or to the Spurs last year,
Yeah.
you'd still be like, hey man, I might still take the Warriors.
I would.
Because they just won 73 games. Like that team before Durant was already ridiculous.
Yep.
And that was a result of drafting well and luck, like you said, with the Steph's contract. But yeah, it was primarily drafting well, and I think that's one of the things that every team hopes for. That's what Philly hopes they have with Embiid and Simmons and Fultz. That's what they hope to become.
I think the difference is definitely the manner that they went about that. Whereas like Philly went rock bottom, whereas the Warriors, although they weren't great before any of those guys got there, they made the playoffs there that year that they beat the Mavericks and all that stuff, and they weren't great, but they weren't also like rock bottom kind of bad. And none of these guys were like a top pick. I mean, Draymond was in the second round, I'm pretty sure, and Clay was like 11 maybe or something like that, and Steph was 7 or 8 or something like that. So, that's kind of what I mean also by they got lucky. They got lucky that like those guys didn't get picked up earlier too. Like they got lucky that the Knicks didn't take. Well, I guess you don't really get lucky with the Knicks. Knicks kind of just that's what they do. But yeah, they had a lot of balls kind of bounce their way, and they also played it very smart. And you want to talk about luck that like the cap spike went up when it did, when Kevin Durant's a free agent. Man.
But I think, at least for me as a Celtics fan, that's what I hope the Celtics rookies become too. And it's like obviously, like you said, like the cap. That's never going to happen again, where the cap just like randomly changes right when you need it.
Yeah.
But again, even before that, they still won 73 games.
Exactly.
So that's why I think, man. I think, yeah, big trades are awesome, and they might get you one title, maybe two, if everything breaks right. But you have to have unselfishness on your team for those guys to all come together and be like, hey, or I might take a cut, or this person might take a cut. Otherwise, that's going to fall apart whenever their contracts are up, because people are going to ask for big money. Role players are going to ask for Tristan Thompson money, and you're going to get. You're just going to be like the Cavs, man. Like the Cavs, they're going to probably make the finals, but.
You're stuck. You're stuck with that. Like that's what your team is. That's what it's gonna be. There's no other moves. But that's normally how in the past your big franchise, your superstar like winning franchises ended up with a bunch of overpaid guys because they won those chips, and that's kind of where things fell apart historically. The Warriors are an aberration to that, where they're smart enough to realize, we gotta take a little bit less cash to keep this thing together, all that jazz. And that's where I kind of think that the rules as they used to be played aren't being played anymore, and that's what's ruffling feathers a little bit around the league. But I think it's perfectly fine. There's no reason why everybody has to take the max on a team. Like, nah, there's no rules about that. I think there is a little bit of an argument in terms of the player association and leverage for them, because you do want your best players making the most money and pushing the limits as to how much you could make, so other guys get paid the amount that they could get paid as well. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily an issue right now in the NBA because everybody's kind of getting paid so far. I don't think the fact that Kevin Durant took a little bit less means that somebody's not going to give LeBron the max next year wherever he wants to go. But I do understand there's a little bit of a slippery slope there in a league where maybe it's not only the Warriors doing that, but there's like the top 10 teams all have like their best guy not taking as much. And I understand where that could kind of lead to. I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think we'll ever get there because, people want that cash.
I agree. I don't think we're gonna get to that point, and there's a reason for that. Just because mathematically, it's not going to work out. For you to be to that point, you would have to be just coming off a championship, or be in that elite position where you're relatively certain, barring like unforeseen circumstances, you're going to be in the finals and competing for a championship. And historically, only like 3 or 4 teams can really say that, a year. So you're not going to have that many teams just all vying for that position because, like I guarantee you next year, Chris Paul and, if the Houston thing doesn't work out, you're not going to see a pay cut being taken there.
Not
that
at all.
team's going to be broken up or or it's or they would have had to win.
Yeah.
Which same situation all around. Like with the Timberwolves, whenever those contracts go up, you're not going to see that team. You're not going to see players in that team taking pay cuts if they made it to the conference finals or the semifinals.
Yeah.
So I think if you win a championship, you'll see that, which is fine. So you have like 1 or 2 teams doing that potentially, and that's it. So I think that's what will stabilize that type of trend.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Happening.
All right, so let me recap over here. So I had my honorable mention. That's the Raptors. Then I went Kings at 5, Wolves at 4, Celtics at 3, Thunder at 2, Warriors at 1 as my best off seasons. What'd you have?
All right, I had Kings as my mention, and I had Sixers, Wolves, Rockets, Celtics, and Warriors.
All right. Yeah, overall you did all right. I don't know about that Houston thing, but overall you did all right.
Yeah, pretty similar lists in a couple places, but I mean, I think a couple of them were no-brainers. Like if you're making a top 5 list, I think you got to put the Warriors in there, and I think you got to put Boston in there.
Yeah,
but I'm biased, obviously. So
yeah, I think after that, everything else is kind of debatable. But those two to me were kind of the ones that when I started writing down, I was like, well, these two are easy. And then the Thunder to me was an easy one too, just because I mean, anytime you could unload Victor Oladipo's contract and get like a better player back, sign me up, man. Like I'll take that any day of the week, man. All right, so let's put a bow on this thing then, man. What do we got here? We're rolling here like 52 minutes, man. I think we got a solid first podcast, inaugural podcast over here. You need anything else you got to get off your chest?
No, man, I think that's it. Check us out for the next one. We're going to talk about the 5 worst, the worst of the worst.
That's right.
Worst
off seasons.
Yeah, so these teams.
The Boston Celtics.
Anyway. But yeah, I think that's a good first podcast. So Husani signing out. Marcos, you want to say goodbye to people?
Deuces.